Lizard people, real. The moon landing, fake. Managing the world's conspiracies is a full-time job for an awkward genius and her dysfunctional coworkers. This week on Super Robotics, the podcast, I am going to be talking about the first 3 episodes of the adult animated series Inside Job. Now, on IMDb, they say, or the plot or the description, the summary of the show, if you will, says for employees of the deep state, conspiracies aren't just theories, they're fact. And keeping them a secret is a full-time job. So that's not that much different from what Netflix said. So some details about this show. It premiered in fall of 2021. It is rated TVMA. Okay. This is, though, it may look like stuff that we've seen for children stylistically, this is not a kid's show. I repeat, this is not a kid's show. It is categorized as TV comedies, and there's 1 season right now on Netflix. I'm not going to go through all the characters, but I'm going to go through just 3 very prominent and main characters, starting with Reagan Ridley. She is a brilliant yet socially awkward robotics engineer who works at Cognito Inc. and believes that society itself can be improved. She manages her irresponsible coworkers while seeking out a coveted promotion along the way. Then we have Rand Ridley, Reagan's father. He is the paranoid former CEO and co-founder of Cognito Inc., who was fired after nearly exposing the deep state. I should also mention that Reagan is biracial. She is Asian and white. Next, we have Brett Hand. He is a yes man from Washington, D.C. He's like a complete frat bro that just basically wants everyone to like him, and that's its own thing that gets talked about during the show. It is implied that he was hired partially because his genetic appearance makes him undetectable to facial recognition. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I'm going to start off with episode 1. I watched 3 episodes, and that's what, a while ago I had said that I was going to do, is just I want to explore more series, more animated series. So I wasn't going to pressure myself or burden myself with trying to watch an entire series or at least season 1 and then talk about it. 3 episodes, and then if I feel that moved, I'll come back and talk a little bit more about it. And if I don't, well, I don't. So episode 1 is called Unprecedented. And so, like I said, maybe I didn't say that actually. Maybe I just thought it. Who knows? So this show looks like Rick and Morty. And through my reading, I learned that the creator and I guess the executive producer and all that sort of stuff, they're actually from Gravity Falls. So that's why the visual style, which I'm actually not going to go too much more into after this moment, is very reminiscent of the whole like Rick and Morty regular show, Gravity Falls. Like that's the visual, if you will. Cognito Inc. is the company that they all work for, and it is very similar to the TVA from Loki. If you watched that series or if you read the comics, then you already knew about the TVA. So, they're here to, or like Scandal. Yeah, Scandal had like fixers and stuff like that, but essentially it's like you're keeping the public upholding the public's beliefs about the world and or the government, and again, like they said, conspiracy theories. So Reagan and Rand are the main characters. As I've said, they are operating what they call and often refer to as a shadow government. Like there's a whole actual government that's happening that's not really in alignment with what the people of the country or world perceive, right? So in this episode, they swap out the president with a droid, and it's weird because they do that at like this very important function. But anyways, as you can imagine, the droid goes rogue. It wants to wipe out the human race, pretty much like Ultron from Avengers and the What If series. Like more so like the What If series, the droid becomes so self-aware. He's like, the only way to preserve Earth essentially is to just get rid of humans. And like, I get it. Like, I get it. So with Reagan's help, she's able to stop the droid and there's like a unlife switch, if you will, that only Reagan can activate. I think either she or her dad did some tinkering with that. And, these are going to be not little, it's going to be pretty spoiler, but I'm going to make sure like the juicy parts, I'm not going to reveal too much into you, but it is like complete chaos and pandemonium for sure. So, like I said, Brett is very much like a frat bro, and he's brought on to help balance Reagan out because she is quite cynical. And they end up agreeing to work together to, just do things. Like, it's pretty obvious that he's the face and she's the brains, and both are needed in order to get things accomplished, if you will. So even though she is able to stop the droid, she doesn't destroy him. And we see that at the end of the episode, he's being kept away in like this super glass protected like space, deep down underground in like her own private area. So it's kind of weird because the episode ends with like the droid saying that he's watching her, like he'll be watching her. And I'm like, oh, so this is not the last we're probably going to see of this droid. And I should say at this point, it's not even in his like full body capacity. He's kind of like a piece of himself, the presidential droid thing, right? Episode 2 is called The Clone Gunman. And it starts off with Reagan and the droid again, like in this basement area. And they're talking about how she saved him just so she can study him. Not that she's about to let him free or anything, but she wants to know how he was able to become, like, evolve essentially and become so self-aware. So she plans on studying that. So what was it called again? It is called Cognito Inc. Much like a lot of companies, needs to do some downsizing. And they, one way or another, Reagan and Brett say that they should get rid of the clone department because a freak accident happened and some of these JFK clones get released. And there's this weird thing that happens that I think if you add heat to the clones, they like expand or something. I don't know. We'll get back to that. So there's a moment in this episode where Brett asks Reagan if she sees Akira. And I was like, what's going on here? And Reagan's like, of course, anime is very mainstream right now. And I was like, true that. True that. It's been quite interesting. Like, I mean, we already know it's no secret or anything like that. This is not also a personality trait. This is not a personality trait. I do not watch anime. I don't. But it is not the end of the world or, anything like that. But I am aware of Akira. I tried watching Akira, which it will come out in one of these episodes. So for the show to have that self-awareness, which it has a lot already from episode 1, I didn't get into that. But to say that anime is very mainstream right now, I was like, oh, look at you. That's funny. So anyways, the Kennedy clones that have been released from the clone department somehow get heat activated and they kind of like combine and morph and become one massive, grotesque looking thing on my screen. Like, it was not nice looking. And there is even a moment where I guess what in the beginning, even before some of that stuff, when Reagan's doing the tour of the clone department, she's like, oh, you have Tupac. And the person who's the head is like, we have 3 and 4 Pac too. And I was like, y'all are funny. So one way or another, I can't completely remember, everything gets resolved. Reagan and Brett, like, oh no, Reagan and Brett don't save the day. They actually rely on the man who has been kept at Cognito Inc. He's the one who unlifed, as the young kids are saying, JFK, they kept him there incognito Inc. So they like release him, and he's the only one that's able to take down these JFK clones. And that's it. That's the episode. Episode 3 is titled Blue Bloods, right? So this one is, I don't know. I just never know what to expect with these episodes at this point. Once I started the show, I was like, okay, this is going to be a wild ride. So with episode 3, the head of the company, his name is JR. He says something bad about lizard people causing a PR disaster. And lizard people are also known and referred to as reptoids. So they have this like HR meeting, and they decide that the coworkers, the team, Reagan's team, needs to go and do some sensitivity training. So Reagan, in the sensitivity training, one of the reptoids is like, I don't know, let's just say talking about like compassion or something. And he says, okay, everyone now hug someone. And you can see that Reagan is starting to short circuit, right? So she's supposed to hug Brett, and she ends up punching him. And it's like, girl, what is wrong with you? Like, why is that your reflex for a hug? And like, I feel you on the hugging thing, like I get it, but I have never punched someone because I was feeling so socially awkward or challenged, if you will, because I was about to hug them or they were about to hug me, right? So that's their own thing. So she ends up creating this like robotic spider thing, like hands, like at least 3. So, and well, 3 and 3 on each side. So that makes 6 robotic arms to do the hugging for her. And okay, so what happens is they end up going to like this reptoid underground ceremony event thing. Like it's a really huge deal. Like they arrive in like limos and all the stuff, and there's red carpet. And one way or another, she ends up causing a lot of trouble. During this function, Brett was supposed to give a speech, but he runs into some of his fraternity bros, and he learns that there are actually reptoids, and they haze him in a way that actually made me quite uncomfortable, which I know is supposed to be true and relatively accurate to actual hazing, but anyway, so he was not able to give the speech. Reagan gives the speech. She ends up ripping off the arms of this very important reptoid, and like all hell breaks loose. However, we do learn that she has a moment, maybe her dad shows up or something. She has a moment of like unpacking, if you will, and breaking down some mental barriers, where she realizes that she was unable to hug anyone without short circuiting because her dad had made her this robotic bear to hug her as a child because he didn't want to hug her, and it traumatized her so bad that she suppressed that memory and like the correlation, and that the only thing she can do when it came to hugging was to just physically react like that. So she says this thing where she's like, maybe physical boundaries can be good, but maybe no one should touch each other ever. And I was like, you know what? I'm not mad at that, especially with like all these different things just going around in the earth, on the planet. Don't touch this, cover your mouth, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, all sorts of things. It's like, yeah, how about no one just touch ever again? Just don't do it. So that's the first 3 episodes of Inside Job. My final thoughts is that like I actually found this show to be, for me personally, I found this to be way more tolerable than Rick and Morty. At least after 3 episodes, like I feel okay continuing to watch this. I didn't even check and see how many episodes there were, but there's probably somewhere between like 8 and 10. And I'm like, I could do that. I can do that. Rick and Morty, I have watched anywhere between 6 to 8 episodes, and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? That particular show, it like makes my skin crawl a little bit, and this one hasn't yet, even though I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't in some sort of way. But yeah, I'm totally going to continue watching the show. And I plan on enjoying it and accepting it for what it is. And, that's kind of fine. If you have seen Inside Job, let me know what were your thoughts. And if you haven't, do you think you will check it out after hearing this? Let me know in the comments, as well as if there are any animated shows or movies or maybe even short films that you think I should check out and talk about either in a proper episode, maybe, make it just a quick reel. Let me know in the comments. I would like to thank you for listening, for checking the show out, supporting me, supporting um, the break that I had, all that sort of stuff. You can find me on all social media platforms at Simply Robotics, SIMPLYROBOTIX. And, my website, simplyrobotics.com. I'm your host, Monique. Don't forget, you can join the Patreon where you can actually watch this as a proper video in its entirety. I also will have some behind the scenes footage and stories or whatever, documentations of my little passion project. You can join the Discord where I do my online game nights and we just kind of hang out and chat there. I have a monthly newsletter, which is just essentially just a roundup of everything. So, maybe you're not that active on social media. Maybe you don't really want to join the Patreon or the Discord, but the newsletter once a month, unless there's something else a little time sensitive, is a nice collective roundup of things. I also have a shop, that's simplerobotics.com/shop, where you can purchase merch for the podcast and some other things coming along, such as my podcast workbook. So maybe you have a podcast, maybe you want to start one, and you just need a little bit of guide just to help you structure your episodes. I got you. I'm selling that in bundles and also an individual worksheet. And I think I have covered it all. Once again, I am Monique. This is Simple Robotics, the podcast, a podcast that explores the animation industry one episode at a time. I will see you again soon. Bye.